Welcome to this week's Sandpile. This week we're going to talk about templates versus custom builds. What are partners doing and why? But first, we'll start with some news. When I look at the BC Academy, coming out this week will be a hero web app with a call to action, an optional lightbox video. So that could be entertaining. I'm kind of tired of sliders myself, so I'm looking forward to seeing that one. That's from Brian Mulholland from BC Academy. On the BC Guru side, there are no updates to report. I did go through myself that sorting techniques for all skill levels that Scott Reynolds had done, and that's an excellent series if you haven't seen that one yet. Fair bit of news on the BC App Store. There is a new app from EFX Pro Media called Currency EX. And it's a multi-currency site price converter. Just reading a quote from the page, Currency EX has been developed for business catalyst sites that operate with international trade to allow their users to define a currency of their choice from a multi-currency list. So that can be pretty cool if you've got a larger site. Code Production is still offering the beta of their Nice editor. It's a $39 installation fee. And then at some point later, there'll be a monthly price, but now's a chance to get in and try it out for $39 basically. The Zapier app has updated the app with a bunch of new triggers. So from the page again, it's create web app items. That's a fairly big one. Update web apps, find and create customers, subscribe and unsubscribe to secure zones. So some pretty decent changes there. BC status wise, looks like there's nothing scheduled there. The maintenance was all done. That's all fine. And that is all the news I have. Does anyone else have some news they'd like to share with the group? Okay, well, let's get into this. Templates versus custom builds. So I'm going to try something. I don't know if it's going to work or not. So let me just bear with me. So I launched a poll there. If you can all just take a few moments and fill it out. I don't know exactly how this is going to work, so. It's kind of cool. I've got it open on my iPad in front of me, so I did my answers on that. Just waiting for a couple people more to do something there, and then I'm going to end it and see if you can see the results, which is what I'm hoping for. Technology. So Bill's saying he can't get past number 2 if he's not using templates. That could be a problem exists between keyboard and floor. Meaning maybe I said something so that you can't get through it. So you can't get past 2. So I should have maybe had a does not apply or something on that one. Okay, well, let's just end it and see what we get. So if I say share results, there. Other than maybe my setup issue, that's not so bad. So lots of people using templates, lots of people using a mixture of the two. If they're using templates, they seem to be more concerned about functionality, or that's the winner, and then design, and then whatever framework it's on. So that's good. And then it's a mix of the two for BC Ready or adapting from Theme Forest. So hopefully there's no surprises for anybody there. But I did just want to kind of test that out and see how that worked. That's not so bad. Would you rather have, if I'm going to do a poll, something like this, would you rather have it in this time, or would you rather I do it like I did it last time, where I sent a link out and you had lots of time to get to it and go through it? Anybody have a preference? Yeah, Greg's a fan of doing it during the session. Yeah, I think this works for like 1 to 3 questions. I don't think I'd want to do 20 questions through this vehicle, but like I did, like the poll I sent out last week. But to do 2 or 3 is probably good. I just have to be a little more careful about the setup. All right, so you saw the results for the first 3 items there. No real surprises to me. I think maybe I'm a little more surprised that functionality was more important than either design or the framework. So I'll give that some thought. So when you're looking at templates, if you're using a template, do you try for consistency in the template structure? Meaning, like, do you always use foundation? Is that of primary importance to you? Or do you match the template functionality to the client need? Now, I think I can answer that based on the poll results. I think for the most part, people are matching the template functionality to the client need. But anybody have an opinion on that? You can express either through the chat or unmute yourself and talk to the group. Okay, no real opinions. So if you are custom building each site, do you use a standard framework, a custom framework, or something else? Do you always use Foundation? Do you always use Bootstrap? Do you have one that's in-house, some variation? Yeah, Greg's indicating that most templates are fairly straightforward functionality. So if there are specific needs, it has to be addressed by the agency, which makes sense to me. And Jeremiah uses Foundation. We use Chicago Digital. We're using a semi-custom foundation. So it's based on Foundation, and then we strip some of the stuff out that we don't like to try and minimize the file sizes and stuff, but Foundation. Greg sticks to Foundation or Bootstrap. And definitely BC Gurus is on the Foundation bandwagon there. There's very, very few Bootstrap. Bill uses Foundation, starts with a starter template, much like we do, and covers about 60% of the needs. That's pretty much what we're doing too, Bill. Mary, which she said this before, and it kind of surprises me a little bit, but she uses the fluid grid layouts in Dreamweaver and builds each template from scratch. And from what I understand, Mary, you've had great success with that. It's been no concerns for you. So Greg asked, why does BC Gurus prefer Foundation? Because the people that were involved in building the templates knew Foundation. That's the way they started building them. And then, frankly, as each person took over, including myself, it just became simpler and simpler to standardize on Foundation. Particularly for support, when you think about handling support calls, if you have to know and understand more than one framework, it can be a bit of a challenge. But no reason other than that's kind of what's always been done. The starting framework that's given to the person building the site is already Foundation. It's already built. It's built from a prototype basically. So to have 2 prototypes, or to have to build 2 templates for each design, they just felt it wasn't going to work. And Mary confirms, yeah, the fluid grid's working well for her. So here's a question I'm interested in knowing what you guys think. And I'll just say what I wrote here, which is, how are you finding the cost of a template build versus a custom build? So I suspect that the custom is more expensive, but is that the actual case in practice? So when you factor everything in, design, build, learning the template, learning the framework, whatever, do you feel there's a like a custom build is 2 times as much or 3 times as much, or do you find in practice that there really is about the same dollar amount? And maybe what I'm going to do is just share my screen and put these questions on the. Zoom that up about 300%. And let me just bring the chat back so I can see it. Yeah, so Bill kind of confirms what I suspected, which was he can apply a design to his own starter kit in about 3 to 4 hours, but would spend twice that long reverse engineering someone else's template. So I think, Bill, what you're suggesting is you're finding a custom build is every bit as economical as building from a template, if I'm paraphrasing there. And Megan agrees with Bill as well. And then Greg also confirms that customizing templates with individual page designs and features is something they need to do fairly often. So it's much easier when they're using a framework such as Bootstrap or Foundation, where you know largely the layout and you know largely how those frameworks work. So instead of having to look at something custom each time. So next question, is there an advantage to working with your custom build versus learning how a template is built? I.e., when you build a template, I follow certain patterns that may not be obvious. So when I built some of the templates for BC Gurus, I've had some feedback in individual conversations with some folks that sometimes it's difficult to learn what I was thinking when I built a certain section. And I think that's confirming really what Bill and Greg have been saying. This whole reverse engineering where you have to figure out how someone built something. And I'm not currently building the templates. So now, the next person that's building the templates is going to do it differently again. So now, if you're using BC Guru's templates, you're going to need to relearn them once again, just a little bit of how to use these templates. So is there an advantage to working with your own custom build? And I think Bill has confirmed that by, as he says, he can apply design to his own starter template in 3 to 4 hours. I certainly find that using our custom framework, even though it's foundation based, it's still a custom framework. And once you understand how to do certain things, even to go and rob and steal, if someone wants a fixed nav at the top or some variation of that, you just go take it from the last 2 sites ago that you built that in and pull the code across, make a little change, and you're good to go. So, Greg indicates applying sound coding standards, such as we try and do with BC Guru, seems to help out, as you know where to find things and how things are generally done. So when I was doing the QA and stuff on templates that were being built, I was try to be real careful to avoid exploding script files and exploding CSS files. Like I want one CSS file, I want one script file if at all possible. Trying to stick with that. So I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, Megan says, if you're using your own stuff, you're not sifting through someone else's code and learning how it's built. We don't all think the same. So for sure, I know even within Chicago Digital, when someone takes over a project I've worked on, sometimes they give me a call and say, why did you do that this way? So, and this maybe I might have already asked this in a different way. So every late last week, I kind of sit down and I try and write out some questions and prepare some notes for the Sandpile, so I have something to say. It's not just dead air. So you'll pardon me if sometimes I repeat the question because it sure sounded different in my head when I wrote it down. But do you actually find building from a template quicker, or does learning the template take the time you spend with a custom sites design? So it's about the same. So I think what I'm seeing in the comments is really, it's not any quicker to build from a template. By the time you have to kind of relearn how that particular template was done, you might, if you have the skill set, you might be better off to just do a custom build. And maybe that's the key. It's the skill set that matters there. If you're a front end developer and you're good with coding, then perhaps it's better to say better to use a custom framework or your own framework. But if that's not the skill set you have in your agency, and you would have to hire that out, so maybe that's the trade-off where you look at a template. Mary indicates lately she's been sticking with the same template company, so she understands how they're put together. And yes, that skill set matters for sure. Yeah. So, and again, if you're looking through the comments, I think you're getting that same feedback. I am reading the questions and stuff, by the way, because I haven't found a way to get the chat session, what people are writing in the chat, out into the recording. So that's why I'm reading them out. Much like if you're at a presentation and someone has a mic and you can't hear the question. So how do you handle showing your customer how to work with your template or your site or your custom build? I'd be interested to hear about that. Do you have training videos? Do you have one-on-one training sessions? Do you run a course where you might have 6 or 8 people either online or in person, where you show them how to do things? Or do you find they just don't want to know about it? They just want you to take care of it? So Mary's finding short video tutorials on specific tasks. I know Bill, it was a while back, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, he shared an email series that he sends out, which I thought was real cool. In fact, I still have it. So I think there's 8 or 10 emails that go in there that he drips out for a new site build. And so he's not trying to feed them with a fire hose. He gives them just a little bit at a time and gives them links to resources and such that they can use. And it's an upsell opportunity too, for sure. But I thought that was a good approach. So Jack was indicating that they use BC Guru's templates for inspiration. So he starts with a complete template, and by the time it's done, it looks nothing like the template. And I've certainly seen that and heard that, almost like a prefab house. It's timely to then remove the remnants of the template. Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later. There's some cruft in there if you're making those kind of changes. But I know I've spent some time on the support side for BC Gurus, or in effect, I was the second tier help desk for a lot of the stuff there. And I was quite surprised at what people were doing with some of the templates. You almost, in some cases, I had to ask which template they started with, so I could maybe go find the core code and see if I could figure out what the issue was. So Mary says they do one-on-one sessions with their clients once the site is set up, and they also put the components they would want to change in a template in a content holder. So they're careful to put the content in places where it's easier for their customers to get to and to edit without getting into trouble. And they've got some help pages for clients in their website as well. I've often thought that a series of videos was a really good approach, and I've certainly used that for some of my clients before. When I had worked with my own agency stuff, I would prepare custom one-off videos if I had a customer couldn't understand how to enter a blog post. So I'd record actually entering a blog post and send them that video, and the one person I sent it to still has it because they post relatively regularly, but it's every 2 or 3 months, and they have some technical challenges sometimes. So she just watches the video, and then she's good. Yeah, Bill says same as Mary. They try very hard not to put any code in a content holder or page content. So keep the code away from them. Keep it so they can just edit the content, for sure. I must say I'm probably guilty of not being as good at that as I should have been in some of the templates I built for PC Gurus. So if you're the victim of that, I'll just say I apologize for that. And I'm working to get better, just like Bill. So for responsiveness, do you let the framework functionality handle things and adapt? Or are you more mindful of the overall experience? And what I'm really getting at there, do you just let the framework adjust for the mobile experience, or do you go specifically for a different experience on a mobile device? Are you hiding things or not displaying things, or making it really look different for a mobile experience versus a desktop experience? Or are you just letting the framework adapt the content down? Yeah, Bill says he hates seeing his old sites. I definitely have that same concern. So lately, I've been experimenting with giving a different experience. If any of you watched, I did a couple of tutorials on 5 different layouts, and that's kind of where this idea came from. Where on the desktop it looks one way, and on the mobile site it's the same content, but it looks quite a bit different. Where I hide and show assets or make things look completely different because it's not appropriate to have anything big and large on a mobile device. Now, Laura indicates it depends on the type of client and the project dollars. Yeah, for sure. To have that kind of focus, you definitely need to be up in a bit of a higher end budget. And Bill indicates he try to match the experience to the device. Yeah, if you can, if you have a client that will understand that and fund that, it makes that project, I think it's just that much better. So the next question I had was, how do you handle the implication that template or framework sites look like other template framework sites? So for instance, someone says, oh, nice foundation site, or oh, nice bootstrap site. Do you have any concerns with that? Did your clients ever come back with that? Are you running across that at all, or am I just kind of dreaming? Yeah, John indicates that's not a concern for them. Greg works hard at avoiding that and creates a higher perceived value. So through design work, through customization, I just try and avoid it looking like that for sure. Laura's not running into it. Bill's not running into it. Mary just doesn't like the word template. Makes her clients feel it's not unique. Yeah, that's kind of I don't know that. I think one of my later questions is, do you tell them it's a template? Bill, I love that. Master pages. So Mary, you might want to take that to the bank. Bill doesn't call them templates. He calls them master pages. I love that. I love that. There's a fellow who understands the print world, PowerPoint and all those devices. I love that, master pages. I'm trying to think of a funny joke for that MasterCard. For everything else, there's master pages. Greg calls them pre-designed sites to be customized to individual client needs. Not bad. I think of the two. I suppose if you say master pages, you kind of have to explain that, where Greg's is kind of self-explanatory. So I don't mind the word framework, actually. I say, like, we use a framework and then customize that to meet your specific needs. I don't mind that idea. So I wondered, do you check for extra code? So something as simple as the template builder's credentials may be hidden somewhere, that a search engine would pick up, to even maybe some kind of malicious code. Do you check for that? And I think the next question is, has anyone ever been a victim of that? Mary says, should I? Depends where you get your templates from. I can say with certainty that that is not existent in the BC Gurus templates. I've never seen it. But I mean, some people take templates off of ThemeForest, and I'm not picking on ThemeForest, but for example, they'll take an HTML template and pull it into BC. I don't know where those templates come from. I can't speak to those. So I just wondered. Yeah, thanks for trusting me, Jack. Yeah. I just wondered if anybody's ever come across that. And again, part of my preparation is I'll Google the question and see what kind of content is out there. And this was admittedly on someone else's site where they'd had some kind of they had a malicious script basically that and malicious is not necessarily, that's a strong word, but basically what the template builder was trying to do was get some link backs. So Mary says they have a whole process where the designs. So her husband designs the look of the website in CorelDRAW, and once the client is happy, it's rendered out in Dreamweaver. And he's kind enough to check if you can code it first. Sometimes you don't know until you try. Yeah, I've had my share lately of sites that were difficult to code. So that will definitely keep you safe from malicious code. Yeah, Jack says he didn't read the article, but he recently saw some headlines of how third-party CSS can contain some bad things. Bill says they work much the same way, but with Illustrator and Sublime Text. We're starting to use Sketch a lot more, and then I use Dreamweaver. Although I don't know if anybody else is using Dreamweaver. I thought everyone else at Chicago Digital was using Dreamweaver, so I switched from brackets, especially when they pulled brackets into Dreamweaver. But I don't know. I have no particular Dreamweaver. I have no particular reason to change yet again and learn another code editor. Dreamweaver has been working fairly well for me as of late. So no one's come across any code that they weren't expecting, or say any hidden footers or any of that kind of stuff that they didn't appreciate. I'm glad if that's the case. That speaks well for the industry, but I just wondered. So the next one was template sites can be verbose just because you're trying to cover a lot of possibilities and different bases compared to what you would need, doing just what you need for a custom site. So if you're using a template, do you do anything to pare down the files and the pages of a template site? So I know in BC Gurus, we build a bunch of extra content there in case you use this module or that module or whatever else. When you use that template, do you go and remove those files, or you just leave them there and trust that maybe they'll be there later if necessary? Back on the other question, Bill did find some images that were supposed to be included but were not licensed. I'd seen that several years ago when I first started with BC Gurus. There was some issues with they just finished up handling some templates that were built with images that weren't licensed. So Laura removes the extra stuff as needed. And Jeremiah does the same thing. They only save what's needed for the final client site. So they're cleaning that stuff up. Mary does the smart thing and saves it out to a backup and then removes it. That's a good approach. Because invariably, you delete something and 6 months later, they're going to want that functionality and you'll wonder where you put it. I must admit, when I was building from templates, I would just leave them in there. And I might go as far as to turn off indexing for those specific pages if there are actual pages, but I tended just to leave the stuff there. I wasn't that concerned about file size. And if it wasn't affecting the page load speed, I would just leave it there. Whoop. Not sure what happened there. So how do you handle this subject with your clients in your proposals? Do you mention templates specifically, or do you do like Bill and call them master pages? Do you avoid talking about it at all? Do you just not even bring it up? I know in my proposals, I used to say the most cost-effective way to achieve what you want within your budget is to start with a template. I use language like that, but I wonder what you're doing. Pardon me while I answer my tweet. Oh, that's good news. Get to watch the grandbaby Thursday night. Jeremiah says, if they want extra functionality 6 months after the site goes live, you didn't do a very good job during the discovery phase. I would argue against that. I would say clients' needs change. What they say they want out of the gate after they've got some experience with their site, after they've got some success, things change enough for sure. But I appreciate the sentiment, and you're okay to call me out on that. I can live with that. Yeah, be careful. I'll show you videos of that little. It's Olivia's her name, and she's got Grandpa wrapped around her little finger. So Sean figures it's unethical not to say it's based on or using a template. It's interesting. I personally think, I can go. I expose that myself, but in my opinion, if you're meeting the deliverables of the proposal, I guess I would say I use a line often. Do you ask a plumber what's in his toolkit when he shows up at your house, or do you just want him to fix your leaky faucet or install your new toilet? So I guess, Sean, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think I would. I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with it. So Mary says she lets them know that they start with a framework or master pages to keep the costs down. So, and I don't think there's any concern with mentioning it. I mean, as long as, especially if you pair it up with it helps keep costs down and those kinds of things, I think clients will be pretty accepting. So Megan says she tells clients that they use a wireframe structure as a base for the site and build on that. And there are so many devices and browsers where it's not cost effective for their budget, again, the budget, to have them built from scratch and iron out the bugs and display issues. And Laura again mentions the framework to decrease the cost as well. So it comes down to if you pitch it as a cost saving measure, I think it's generally speaking accepted. And I mean, I tend to say things like, you know what, there's only, mind you, in my agency, I was dealing typically with people who were, I call them mavens and mavericks. They were 25, 30-years in business, and they were retiring from that, and they were starting up to be business coaches or keynote speakers. That was my niche. So invariably, this was their first site. At most, it was their second site. So, cost was a factor for them. So they just wanted something that looked good and worked. So it might be because of my experience that I'm saying the things I'm saying, but. So Jack says they like to use a template to see if they like the general look of it and go from there, but they do avoid using the word template. So I would certainly, I mean, I never showed them, I never said, go to this site and pick one of these, 50 templates. Invariably, I would send them 2 to 3 choices and say, if you like one of these, great. If you don't, let me know and we'll narrow it down. But yeah, it can be, I get what you're saying, Jack, and it can be confusing for a customer to have too much choice. So you do have to do a decent job of discovery, understand their needs, understand what you're trying to do for them functionality wise and even look and feel wise. And really it should come down to, between 2 and 3 choices that they would have that would meet their needs. Now, again, that's from my experience, that's talking with people who are just getting going. I know at Chicago Digital, when I'm building sites there, it's invariably someone. This is not new sites. This is someone who's had a site for a while. They have some real specific opinions and needs, and they're more expensive because of it. But so, is there any consideration to the site being custom built versus a template when you consider competitive edge for your end client? So, could you express to your end client that, hey, if we do a custom built site, you won't be like anybody else, and that can be a competitive advantage for you. Do you use language like that, or am I just reading into things? So Laura doesn't use that kind of language with her clients. Bill does it for design, but not for functionality. Yeah, cool. Even though both are custom, but I guess probably what I read into that, Bill, is that the clients do care more about the design than the functionality. They want it to look good. They want it to look unique. They don't necessarily care if it's got unique functionality per se. Mary indicates that being custom built is one of their selling points, so she's definitely using it as a competitive advantage that way. That's for your purposes. Do you feel your clients believe that it's a competitive advantage in their market? So if you're building a site for one of your clients and they're one of 10 companies in that line of business, do you believe they feel that being custom built is a competitive advantage for them? And Sean's indicating that custom build generally means better result, as everything was built to a specific purpose. I would have to agree with that for sure. Laura confirms yes for design, but not competitive advantage. They'll put their time and efforts into additional marketing going forward. Yeah, I can buy that. Mary says her clients couldn't tell the difference between a custom site and a template. Yeah, Jack, I'd have to agree. Someone who's looking for a custom build is probably dealing with a larger agency to start with, and it's part of a larger package. I used to use words to my clients like, you don't need a website. What you need is more customers, and a website is a way to get that. So again, focusing more on, the call to action, most on the what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, it eludes me. But looking at more the results from the website, not so much the website. They don't really care how it looks. What they want is the results from it. They want more leads. They want more closes. So Mary's got a logical path through their business. They're a graphics company as well, so they offer the logo design first, then they do the business card, maybe some stationery, and then they move on to the websites. Most of their clients are small businesses, so often new ones. Yeah, Mary, yes. Why do they want a website? So again, they don't need a website. They need more customers, and a website is one way to get that. So that's how I try and turn the conversation more into a conversion focused. Conversion was the word I was looking for before. So does your end client express any concern about being locked in to you as a developer on a custom site build? Is the perception that a template, is there a perception that a template can be handled by anyone? So for those of you that are doing custom builds, do your clients ever express any concern about being locked into you because of that? And Mary says, well, they kind of are. Fair enough. So do they ever twig onto that? Do they ever express any concern? Do you have to handle that as an objection, Mary? And I mean, from the broader perspective, they kind of are, especially if you're pulling them onto BC and all the rest of that. There's that whole conversation. But so Bill figures they're more locked in to you because we're using BC than because it's a custom build. I kind of have to agree with that. And Jack indicates, isn't a custom build still just HTML? Yeah, true. At the core, that's what it is. After you BCize it, then it's like Bill says, it's more, they're locked into you more because it's BC than because it's a custom build. I guess though, if you're not necessarily using a framework, or like I've worked on some sites where they didn't use Foundation Bootstrap, they had their own custom CSS, their own custom CS framework basically, and it was brutal to work with, to figure out where that developer's mind was. Why would he have done it this way or that way? If you've worked with Foundation, you remember when you were first learning it, it was not simple. You definitely had to learn it. So maybe that's where that question came from in my mind. So Greg says that he leverages off the BC community, and the question so indicates, hey, there's lots of people out there, and the question whether it's custom or template never really arises. So for support, he says, hey, if you don't like working with us, there's lots of other people in the community, and just avoids you're not avoiding the question of custom or template. It just never comes up. Mary says her clients trust them to help them in other IT aspects as well, and so they're happy to be committed to them. And it definitely brings them repeat work. And then some do move on though. And I don't really care what platform you're on. If you're on WordPress and you go move to somebody else, you got just as much pain as if you're on Business Catalyst and you go somewhere else. So I wondered if anybody has this progression where you start with a template and then move to a custom build as the need, site traffic, and dollars are available. So how many of you start with the perception that a template build is less expensive, then move to a full custom one later once they're established and they're generating traffic and some conversions? Does that actually happen in practice, or really once they got it built, they kind of stay with it? Laura indicates she's seeing this more and more. So as her clients are building, that's what's happening. And this came to me because as I came to work with Chicago Digital, now I'm working with sites where they may have started with a template, and when I go look at the old site and move content across, I recognize it as a template, and now they're getting a custom build and stuff. So I just wondered how many other people have done that. So that's a good point, Bill. Bill says, they've done that for some of their earlier customers where they were on templates and maintenance becomes horrible. So maybe they weren't responsive, or maybe they weren't as well built as they are lately. And it was more for their own sanity than for the client needs. So makes sense to me. Yeah, at some point it just doesn't make sense anymore to keep working with something that's difficult for you, even for you to update. So the next two are, how do you show value when proposing a site built from a template? And then how do you show value when proposing a site with a custom build? And if you're in a competitive environment, how do you compete with other proposals that are from templates? So if there's 4 other proposals at the table and they're all built from templates, how do you bring your proposal? How do you compete with that with a custom build? Or do you? If you guys would have known there was going to be a test, you would have studied, I bet, eh? Money, money, money is the bottom line. Really? Mary, I agree with you in principle, but you have to find a way to remove money as the bottom line. So I find ways to, at its simplest, whatever the cost of the site is, I try and bring it back down to, so say I'm quoting them a $5,000 site. I find a way to show them that this is how many customers they're currently bringing in. If we can bring in, like, what's the average value of a customer to them? And whatever it is, if it's, say it's $500, I say, okay, so to pay for that website, we have to bring in 10 new customers to you to pay for that website. Do you think that's possible? And that's how I overcome money as an objection. So if I can show you a way to bring in $10,000 worth of new business with a conversion focused website for $5,000, why wouldn't you do it? Now, you still have to bring in the $10,000. Yeah, Laura, that's as I mentioned, it starts with discovery and showcasing the needs of the persona, understanding the client, understanding how you can narrow it down so that it's narrowly focused on conversion for their target market, and understanding the value of that client to them and referencing that back into dollars. That's the way I would go about it. We're talking about proposals next week, by the way, so maybe this will all feed into that. Now, Bill, I don't quite understand what you mean when you say you think of it as a new boat, not just money. Did you mean boat, or was that an auto correction? So Jack asked if I tell them new ways you're going to get that they're going to get new clients or get them clients, or how you can improve current features. It's a little bit of both. So it really comes down to I spend a lot of time understanding their clients and what makes them want to buy, and then answering those questions basically in a conversion focused website. So anticipating what questions they're going to have, what reasons they'd have to buy from that particular business, and making sure those questions are answered, and that you have a process to lead them into the business. So I'll probably share one of my proposals next week, just to kick things off, but we can talk about it more next week. All right, see you, Megan. Thanks. Yeah, Bill. Sorry, I've lost the train of thought. So thanks for the reply, but I still don't think I know what you meant. So Laura says if the client feels that the experience of the site won't be cookie cutter, the client tends not to care if it starts as a template. That's a good point. So again, if you're focusing on conversion focus and how their specific business is going to work with that template, I don't think it matters if it started from from a template, for lack of a better word. If you're going to take a car and put on new tires, a different engine, a different transmission, change out the interior, and put a go button on the stick shift, does it really matter if it started out as a stock car? I've been watching Street Outlaws on Discovery Channel, so cars are on my mind. So I don't know anybody really covered this one. So how do you compete with other proposals if they're from templates? Do you find yourself in that situation where you're competing against other proposals and you have some idea that they're proposing from a template? So the car's got your son's attention. All right. Okay, no one's got an opinion on that. So this one, I'll show it on the screen here. I thought this was interesting. So basically they said this was talking about a custom built or not, and they said they analyzed their custom projects over the course of a year, realized they were spending about 120 hours on a custom site when they took into account meetings, wireframes, design, development, project management, all that stuff. And even at $70 an hour, that was $8,400 before they could break even. And that's not a profit, that's just to break even. So they found that to remain profitable, they can't do a custom website for less than $15,000. And the majority of small businesses simply can't afford that. So I copied and pasted. This is just an image, but I wondered what you guys thought about that. It kind of makes sense. Yeah. When I first thought about 120 hours, I thought, man, that's a lot of hours. But I mean, I can tell you from custom builds, um, 60 to 80 hours is not unusual. And that's just from my time. And I certainly have had more hours than that. Um, and if I'm working from a custom design, I don't know how many hours are like, I don't know that 120 hours is unreasonable. I think it's probably reasonable. And, $70 an hour is a loaded labor cost, I think is probably pretty reasonable. So I kind of buy this. I kind of think, this is interesting to think about. And Greg even thinks that this example is a minimum cost. I suppose I could agree with that too. Like $70 an hour loaded labor rate is perhaps low, certainly in some areas of the country. Yeah, Mary says it's like a handmade quilt versus a Costco blanket. Both will keep you warm, but yeah. So Laura says since they started using BC templates, their profits are up for that very reason. I'm assuming that's because of what I got on screen there. Now, I mean, from a client perspective, how do you recommend they spend $15,000 when in the back of your mind, you'd have to really believe what you're doing was going to be significantly different than a template to basically double the cost, I guess is what I'm thinking. And maybe double's not quite the right word, but yeah, Greg indicates the biggest project overhead is getting content and imagery from the clients. And a lot of time is spent on that alone, even small sites. We talk about it more next week, Greg, but I before I decided to come on with Chicago Digital, I was getting to the point where I was going to sell a website with content and images already loaded, and then give them a window of 60 days to send me whatever changes they might want, knowing that they would never send a change because they're just not going to do it. So still go through the discovery, but then and charge a bit more and write the content for them. Either write it myself or have it written for me. Provide the images. I had contracts with. I used ING Image, so I had lots of imagery I could pull from, and just put it out there as done. And then say, if you want any changes, just send me specifically what you want changed, and I'm happy to do it. I was Bill asks if Greg's doing niches. Sorry, I thought that was to me. Laura agrees with Greg. That's where they're working to streamline their process. This whole content thing, that was what I thought might have been the answer, was giving them the website complete, ready to go. And then again, if they give them a window of time, if they want any changes, to send you the specific changes that they want. And I really felt that was going to speed that along. And again, I think that would only work for a smaller site. I don't think you're going to get a larger customer to sign off on that. But certainly for the ones I was working with, I thought that would work. Yeah, Bill's got for the niche that they work with, they've got about 3 sets of 7 to 8 pages they can start with and adjust as they want, and then that helps things along. Greg's been using Slick Plan for gathering the content, which he feels works pretty good for him. We've been using Gathered Content. I've worked with that a little bit, but you still have to get them to use it. You still have to get them to provide the content. So yeah, Greg's indicating because they work across all kinds of different businesses, it makes it hard to have a library of content. Could work in niche markets for sure. Yeah, Bill says having 3 sets of 7 to 8 pages only works for about 30% of their projects, but it does save a ton of time in those projects. So again, for a smaller project, I thought it, like, to have somebody, even have somebody write the content for you for the main content, for the about page, for the service page, for the whatever the important pages are, to have somebody write that for you based on your discovery. I really figured that would work. Yeah, Greg indicates having a tool like SlickPlan or like Gather Content is better than getting a stream of emails based on something from 3 months ago that has no relevance to the current situation. Yeah, Laura's indicating that they offer content writing and projects are going better. I was going far enough where I wasn't going to take the project unless the content writing was included. That's the direction I was going, saying that it was just part of it, and I really felt you could certainly cover your costs. You have to you charge more, but you charge whatever it costs you. You could probably even mark it up a bit, but to tell somebody that you're going to deliver them a complete website, content, images all ready to go. They can change whatever they want after the fact. Um, and yeah, I mean, I really thought that would work. Yeah, Mary says her husband needed a website and it had he had a website template subscription that had everything he needed. And so she couldn't have done it any faster. So said, go ahead. Yeah, Jack, I did some SEO research. I asked them for in the discovery phase. I asked them for some keywords. I used that to generate some seed keywords. Sent them back to them for review, but basically that's what the content was written from. So tell me what you want to rank for, and recognize you can't rank for 100 different words. Like, what are the 10 words you want to try and rank for this time out? And again, these are new sites, but what are the 10 words or phrases you want to rank for? And then I would use that to generate generate a keyword list basically. And from that, it also went up with potentially with if they wanted to move into AdWords, we get some idea what was expensive and what had an opportunity to it for cost. All right, let's see what else I got here. So I'll put this link in the chat. This was just an interesting blog article, 10 reasons custom web design is dying. I'm not sure, well, go ahead and read it. It's research, right? I did find a lot of the articles I was finding point to search engine friendly as being a major advantage of custom sites. Now, I don't particularly buy that, but I wonder what you guys think. Yeah, 2013 is ancient, but it obviously shows that custom websites haven't died. So what do you think? There's a lot of the articles I found point to search engine friendly as being the major advantage for custom sites. And again, a well-crafted template, even with your own work on top of that, can be just as search engine friendly. So I don't think that I guess I'm saying I don't think a custom template is any more search engine friendly than a template. Also, many articles point to user experience as being a major advantage of custom sites. What do you think about that? And then finally, many articles point to site speed as being a major advantage of custom sites. So what do you guys think of these last three as we're coming to a close here? So Jack, you think Google may rank custom sites a little higher? It's, I don't know. I don't know why, other than perhaps the whole duplicate content thing. Maybe I could almost buy that, but there's so many sites out there that the fact that yours is similar to 5 other ones in the industry, if that's even possible, I'm not so sure. All right, Bill, thanks a lot for your input. Some tutorials off the BC Gurus side. Integrating any HTML template into BC, which I thought might be useful. There's part 1, 2, and 3. I just pasted in part 1. And then there's this one, which is replacing your partner site. This is one I did actually, because you have to forklift your partner site. You can't just repoint something, but it talks a lot about the components that you have to have to use if you're going to use a non-BC template and convert that into BC. See you, Mary. Thanks. And Scott did a nice tutorial here on BC Academy, building out templates. It's Scott Scheffler, BC Academy, building business catalyst sites with components, which is also interesting. Page control, which is something we use a lot for keeping things simple for our end clients. And you may or may not know this, but this developer course, I participated in the live one actually, but the recording is still there. And you build a site, take an HTML site and convert it into BC through watching this whole series there. So also on BC Academy. So some links there for you. Thanks for your participation this week. Thanks for your opinions and your input. I always appreciate that. Next week, we are going to talk about proposals. What works for you, what hasn't worked for you. See you all next week.